Marcus Chen stared at the eviction notice in his trembling hands, the red letters seeming to mock him under the flickering fluorescent light of his cramped apartment. 3 months behind on rent, and his landlord had finally run out of patience. The notice gave him exactly 7 Earth days to pack up and leave, or face forcible removal by the Galactic Housing Authority. He crumpled the paper and tossed it toward the overflowing trash can, missing by several inches. Everything in his life seemed to be missing the mark lately. His job at the interstellar shipping dock had been terminated when automation replaced most human workers. His savings account showed a balance that wouldn't even cover a decent meal at the food courts in the lower sectors of New Geneva. Marcus had come to this space station 3 years ago with dreams of making it big in the galactic economy. Earth was still considered a backwater planet by most alien species, but humans were known for their adaptability and work ethic. He thought those qualities would be enough to carve out a decent living among the stars. He was wrong. The apartment complex he lived in was a far cry from the luxury accommodations in the upper levels of the station. Down here in Sector 7, the air recyclers wheezed constantly. The artificial gravity fluctuated just enough to make you queasy, and the walls were so thin you could hear your neighbors arguing in 12 different alien languages. Marcus flopped onto his second-hand couch and pulled up the housing listings on his battered tablet. The cheapest places were still far beyond his reach, and most landlords required deposits equal to 3 months' rent up front. He scrolled through listing after listing, each one more depressing than the last. Then something caught his eye. A small apartment in Sector 12, rent listed at barely half the going rate. The listing was sparse on details, just an address and a contact number. No photos, no description of amenities. Marcus almost skipped past it, assuming it was either a scam or a dump so terrible that no one would want to live there. But desperation made him tap the contact button anyway. The call connected, and a face appeared on his screen that made him do a double take. The being looking back at him was clearly not human, but she was striking in a way that made his breath catch. Her skin had a soft lavender hue that seemed to shimmer slightly under the light. Large, expressive eyes the color of deep amethyst dominated her face, and what appeared to be small pearl-like scales traced elegant patterns along her cheekbones. Her hair, if it could be called that, was a cascade of silvery strands that moved as if underwater. "Hello," she said, her voice carrying a musical quality that human vocal cords could never produce. "You are interested in the apartment?" Marcus realized he had been staring and quickly collected himself. "Yes, I am. My name is Marcus Chen. I saw your listing and wanted to know more about the place." She tilted her head in a gesture that was somehow both alien and familiar.
"I am Zara Lynn of the Aquarian Settlements."
"The apartment is small but functional. When would you like to view it?" "As soon as possible, if that works for you," Marcus said, trying not to sound as desperate as he felt. "I can meet you there in 1 standard hour," Zara Lynn replied. "Sector 12, Level 15, Apartment 1247. Do you have any questions about the terms?" Marcus hesitated. "The rent seems very reasonable compared to other places. Is there something wrong with the apartment?" Something that might have been amusement flickered across her features. "Nothing is wrong with the apartment, Marcus Chen. I simply prefer to rent to beings who need the space rather than those who merely want it. You seem like someone who needs it." After the call ended, Marcus sat in stunned silence. There was something about Zara Lynn that intrigued him beyond her obvious beauty. Most aliens he had dealt with on the station were either coldly professional or barely tolerated humans at all. She had spoken to him like an equal, with genuine interest in his situation. An hour later, Marcus stood outside apartment 1247, clutching his tablet and trying to calm his nerves. Sector 12 was a significant step up from Sector 7. The corridors were cleaner, the lighting was steady, and he could actually breathe without wondering what toxins might be in the air. Zara Lynn arrived precisely on time, moving with a fluid grace that reminded Marcus of a dancer. Up close, he could see that the scales on her skin actually shifted color slightly, creating patterns that seemed to reflect her mood. "Thank you for meeting me," Marcus said as she approached. "Of course," she replied, activating the door with a touch of her hand. "Please come see if this will suit your needs." The apartment was small but well maintained. The main room served as both living area and bedroom, with a compact kitchen alcove and a surprisingly spacious bathroom. Large windows offered a view of the station's central hub, where ships of all sizes docked and departed in a constant dance of interstellar commerce. The previous tenant was human as well, Zara Lynn explained as Marcus looked around. I have made sure the atmospheric controls are set for your species' comfort. Marcus nodded, impressed despite himself. The rent being asked for this place was almost criminally low. I have to ask again, why is the rent so affordable? This place is worth twice what you're asking. Zara Lynn was quiet for a moment, her scales shifting to a deeper purple hue. I inherited this building from my father. He believed that shelter should not be a luxury available only to the wealthy. I try to honor his memory by continuing that philosophy. That's very generous of you, Marcus said softly. Perhaps, she replied, or perhaps I simply dislike the idea of good spaces sitting empty while beings struggle to find homes. Marcus felt a warmth in his chest that had nothing to do with the apartment's climate control. I would very much like to rent this place from you, Zara Lynn. I should tell you up front that I'm currently unemployed, but I'm actively looking for work. I can provide references from my previous employer. She studied him for a long moment, her amethyst eyes seeming to look right through him. Tell me, Marcus Chen, what kind of work do you seek? Anything honest, he replied immediately. I'm not too proud to take whatever I can find. I just need a chance to prove myself. Zara Lynn's scales shifted to a warmer golden hue. I believe we can reach an arrangement that benefits both of us. When can you move in? Moving into the new apartment took Marcus exactly 47 minutes, which was probably a record for the shortest relocation in galactic history. His belongings fit into 3 worn duffel bags and a single storage crate that had seen better decades. Everything he owned could be carried in one trip, a sobering reminder of how far his circumstances had fallen. Zara Lynn had insisted on helping him move, despite his protests that it wasn't necessary. She arrived at his old apartment in Sector 7, wearing what appeared to be casual clothing for her species, a flowing garment that seemed to be made of the same shimmering material as her hair. The other residents of the building stared openly as she passed through the corridors, some with curiosity, others with barely concealed hostility. Your former neighbors seem unfriendly, she observed as they loaded his belongings onto a hover cart. Marcus shrugged, hefting his bag of clothes. Humans aren't exactly popular in most parts of the station. We're seen as newcomers who don't belong here. And how do you see yourselves? Zara Lynn asked, genuinely curious. As people trying to make a better life, Marcus replied. Same as everyone else, I suppose. The journey to Sector 12 gave Marcus his first real opportunity to observe Zara Lynn in a more relaxed setting. She moved through the station's corridors with confidence, nodding politely to other aliens they passed. Several species that Marcus had never seen before greeted her warmly, speaking in languages that his universal translator couldn't quite parse. You seem to know everyone, Marcus commented as they waited for a lift. My family has lived on this station for 3 generations, Zara Lynn explained. My grandfather was one of the original architects who designed Sector 12. We have deep roots here. That explained the high quality of the apartment building, Marcus realized. It wasn't just inherited property, it was family legacy. The fact that she was willing to rent to him at such a low price seemed even more significant now. Once they reached the apartment, Zara Lynn helped him arrange his meager possessions. She didn't comment on how little he had, but Marcus caught her studying his few books with interest. You read physical texts, she said, picking up a worn copy of classic Earth literature. Old habit, Marcus admitted. Digital books are more practical, but there's something about real paper that I can't give up. Zara Lynn carefully opened the book, her scaled fingers tracing the pages with reverence. We have a similar tradition in Aquarian culture. Knowledge preserved in physical form carries the essence of those who handled it before. Exactly, Marcus said, surprised at how well she understood. Each book has its own history. Perhaps you could recommend some human literature to me, Zara Lynn suggested. I confess I know very little about your species' written culture. I'd be happy to, Marcus replied, then hesitated. Though I should probably focus on finding work first. Do you know if there are any opportunities in Sector 12? Zara Lynn's scale shifted to a thoughtful blue-green pattern. What skills do you possess beyond dock work? Marcus sat down on his newly positioned couch, considering the question. I'm good with my hands, basic mechanical work, repairs, maintenance. I can speak 4 languages fluently, including Centauri trade standard. I learn quickly and I'm not afraid of hard work. Interesting, Zara Lynn murmured. I may have a proposition for you. What kind of proposition? She settled gracefully into the apartment's single chair, her movements fluid and mesmerizing. This building has 12 units, and I currently manage all maintenance and repairs myself. However, my duties as a cultural liaison for the Aquarian delegation have been expanding, leaving me less time for property management. Marcus felt a spark of hope. You're offering me a job? I am offering you an opportunity, Zaralyn corrected. The work would be part-time initially, basic maintenance, responding to tenant concerns, keeping common areas clean. In exchange, I would reduce your rent further and provide a small wage. It wasn't exactly the career breakthrough Marcus had dreamed of, but it was honest work and a chance to prove himself. I accept, he said without hesitation. Zaralyn's scales brightened to a pleased golden hue. Excellent. I will introduce you to the other tenants tomorrow. Most are friendly, though a few may be suspicious of humans initially. I'm used to that, Marcus said. I'll do my best to win them over. I believe you will, Zaralyn replied, rising from her chair. For now, rest and familiarize yourself with your new home. We can begin your duties in a few days. After she left, Marcus stood at his window looking out at the bustling station hub. For the first time in months, he felt something resembling hope. The apartment was better than anything he could have afforded on his own. And now he had work that would help him rebuild his life. But it was more than just the practical benefits that had his spirits lifting. There was something about Zaralyn herself that intrigued him. She had shown him kindness without condescension, offered him opportunity without making him feel like a charity case. In a galaxy where humans were often treated as second-class citizens, she had treated him as an equal. Marcus spent the rest of the evening exploring his new neighborhood. Sector 12 was like a different world compared to where he had been living. The corridors were wider and better lit. The air was cleaner, and the other residents seemed more prosperous and content. There were shops and restaurants catering to a dozen different species, all coexisting in relative harmony. He stopped at a small cafe that served food compatible with human digestion and ordered a simple meal. The Deltaron proprietor was polite but distant until Marcus mentioned he was Zaralyn's new tenant. Immediately, the alien's demeanor warmed considerably. Zaralyn is good being, the Deltoran said in heavily accented standard. She helped many when they need. You are fortunate to have her as landlady. I'm beginning to realize that, Marcus replied. As he walked back to the apartment building, Marcus reflected on the strange turn his life had taken. 24 hours ago, he had been facing homelessness and despair. Now he had a decent place to live, the promise of work, and a landlady who seemed genuinely interested in his welfare. The building's lobby was small but elegant, with bioluminescent plants that provided a soft, natural glow. Marcus studied the directory by the lifts, noting the names of his new neighbors. Most were species he recognized, though a few were completely unknown to him. Back in his apartment, Marcus lay on his bed looking up at the ceiling. The apartment's sound dampening was so good that he could barely hear any noise from the other units. It was the first time in years he had lived somewhere truly quiet and peaceful. Tomorrow would bring new challenges as he began learning his duties and meeting the other tenants. But tonight, for the first time in a very long while, Marcus Chen fell asleep feeling optimistic about his future. Marcus woke to the gentle chime of his door announcer, a sound infinitely more pleasant than the harsh buzzer in his old apartment. He checked the time display and realized he had slept for nearly 10 hours straight, the longest uninterrupted sleep he'd had in months. The apartment's superior sound dampening and climate control had worked wonders. Zaralyn stood in the hallway when he opened the door, carrying a small device that looked like a cross between a tablet and a toolkit. Her scales showed a cheerful morning pattern of soft yellows and greens. "Good morning, Marcus. I hope you slept well," she said with what he was learning to recognize as her version of a smile. "Better than I have in ages," Marcus admitted, suddenly aware that he was still wearing the same clothes from yesterday. "Give me just a moment to clean up." "Of course. I will wait in the lobby." Marcus quickly showered and changed into his least worn work clothes. When he joined Zaralyn downstairs, she handed him the device she had been carrying. "This is a building management unit," she explained. "It will give you access to all common areas, maintenance closets, and emergency systems. It also contains contact information for all tenants and a list of preferred service providers for repairs beyond your skill level." Marcus examined the device, noting its elegant design and intuitive interface. "This must have cost more than I made in 6 months at the docks." The building management company provided it, Zaralyn said. Now shall we meet your new neighbors? They started on the top floor and worked their way down. The first tenant they encountered was a crystalline named Thexandra, whose body appeared to be made of living gemstone that refracted light in mesmerizing patterns. She was polite but reserved until Zaralyn explained Marcus's role in the building. Human maintenance worker, Thexandra said in a voice like wind chimes. This is unusual choice. Marcus comes highly recommended, Zaralyn replied smoothly. His previous employer praised his attention to detail and reliability. That was a generous interpretation of his termination notice, Marcus thought, but he appreciated Zaralyn's support. I'm looking forward to keeping the building in good condition for everyone, he said. Thexandra's crystalline features shifted slightly, possibly surprise. You speak clearly. Most humans here have poor command of standard. I've had practice, Marcus replied diplomatically. The next few introductions went similarly. Most tenants were cautiously polite, though a few seemed genuinely pleased to meet him. The building housed a diverse mix of species: a centauri diplomat, a family of peaceful insectoids, an elderly Aquarian scholar, and several others that Marcus couldn't immediately identify. The one potential problem came when they knocked on apartment 807. The door opened to reveal a hegemony officer, one of the militant species that had initially opposed human expansion into galactic space. The being's 4 eyes focused on Marcus with obvious distaste. You bring predator species to building, the officer growled at Zaralyn in heavily accented standard. Marcus felt his stomach clench, but Zaralyn remained perfectly calm. I bring a qualified maintenance worker to the building. Commander Vorth, species is irrelevant to job performance. Humans are unpredictable, violent. They do not belong in civilized space. With respect, Commander, Marcus said carefully, I think you might be operating on outdated information about my species. We've been peaceful members of the galactic community for over a decade now. Vorth's 4 eyes swiveled to focus on Marcus, and the human could practically feel the hostility radiating from the alien. Pretty words from apex predator. Perhaps we could continue this conversation another time, Zaralyn interjected smoothly. Marcus has many other tenants to meet today. As they moved away from Vorth's door, Marcus let out a breath he didn't realize he'd been holding. That went well, he said sarcastically. Commander Vorth lost family members during the border conflicts, Zaralyn explained quietly. His hostility is personal, not representative of most beings' attitudes toward humans. Marcus nodded, though he wondered if Zaralyn was being optimistic. The border conflicts had ended years ago, but many species still viewed humans with suspicion. The fact that Earth had been on the winning side of those conflicts didn't help human popularity in certain circles. The rest of the introductions went smoothly. By afternoon, Marcus had met all 12 tenant households and received a comprehensive tour of the building's systems. The structure was impressively well maintained, with backup systems for everything and technology that was at least a generation ahead of what he was used to. Your family really did help design this place, Marcus observed as Zaralyn showed him the central environmental controls. My grandfather believed that good housing was a foundation for good life, she replied. He insisted on building beyond minimum standards. They spent the next few hours going over Marcus's duties in detail. Most of the work was routine maintenance, checking air and water filtration systems, ensuring proper function of artificial gravity generators, responding to tenant requests for minor repairs. It was work Marcus could handle easily, and the building's advanced systems made most tasks straightforward. What about emergencies? Marcus asked as they reviewed the protocols. All serious emergencies go directly to station security, Zaralyn explained. Your role would be to ensure tenant safety and provide initial assessment for repair crews. The building's AI can walk you through any procedures you are unfamiliar with. As the day progressed, Marcus found himself increasingly impressed by Zaralyn's thorough approach to property management. She clearly cared about her tenants' welfare and had systems in place to address any conceivable problem. It was far more professional than the slipshod operation he was used to in Sector 7. One more thing, Zaralyn said as they concluded the tour. There is a monthly tenant gathering in the community room. Attendance is optional, but it helps maintain good relationships among residents. When is the next one? Tomorrow evening. It might be a good opportunity for you to interact with your neighbors in a social setting. Marcus wasn't sure how social he wanted to get with Commander Vorth, but he understood the value of building rapport with the other tenants. I'll be there. As they parted ways, Zara Lynn handed him a small communicator. This will reach me directly if you need guidance or assistance. Do not hesitate to use it. Thank you, Marcus said, meaning it. For everything. I know you're taking a chance on me. Zara Lynn's scales shifted to a warm golden pattern. I prefer to think of it as recognizing potential rather than taking chances. That evening, Marcus sat in his apartment reviewing the building management protocols and tenant files. Each resident had different needs and preferences, and he wanted to be prepared to serve them all effectively. The work was more complex than simple dock labor, but it was also more rewarding. For the first time since leaving Earth, Marcus felt like he was building something rather than just surviving. He was particularly intrigued by what he learned about Zara Lynn herself. According to the property records, she was not only the building owner but also served as a cultural liaison between the Aquarian settlements and the station administration. She held advanced degrees in xenosociology and interspecies relations, and had published several papers on peaceful coexistence in mixed-species communities. No wonder she had been willing to give a desperate human a chance. Her entire career was built around the belief that different species could work together successfully. Marcus was determined not to disappoint her faith in him. The community room buzzed with conversation in at least 6 different languages when Marcus arrived at the monthly tenant gathering. He had spent considerable time choosing what to wear, settling on his best casual clothes and hoping he looked approachable rather than threatening. The lingering memory of Commander Vorth's hostility had made him acutely aware of how his presence might be perceived. Zara Lynn appeared at his side almost immediately, wearing an elegant flowing garment that shifted color from deep blue to silver as she moved. Her scales showed relaxed patterns of soft green and gold. "You came," she said, and Marcus detected what might have been relief in her musical voice. "You said it would help with neighbor relations," Marcus replied, "though I'm not sure how much help I'll be if everyone thinks I'm going to eat them." "Humans do not actually eat other sapient species," Zara Lynn said with amusement. "That is merely primitive propaganda. Try telling that to Commander Vorth." As if summoned by his name, the hegemony officer appeared across the room, his 4 eyes immediately locking onto Marcus. Vorth's presence cast a noticeable chill over the nearby conversations, and several other tenants moved subtly away from both the commander and Marcus. "Perhaps we should mingle," Zara Lynn suggested diplomatically. They approached a small group consisting of Thexandra the Crystalline, an elderly Aquarian named Deep Current, and a Centauri diplomat called Veltar. The conversation halted as Marcus approached, creating an awkward silence. "Please continue your discussion," Marcus said. "I don't want to interrupt." "We were speaking of the new trade regulations affecting the outer systems," Veltar said carefully. "Perhaps too complex for general interest." Marcus recognized the polite dismissal but decided to push gently. "Actually, I worked the shipping docks for 2 years. I saw firsthand how regulatory changes affected cargo flow and pricing." Thexandra's crystalline features brightened with interest. "What patterns did you observe?" For the next 20 minutes, Marcus found himself engaged in a surprisingly sophisticated discussion about interstellar commerce. His practical experience from the docks provided insights that complemented the other's more theoretical knowledge. Gradually, he noticed the tension in the group beginning to ease. "Fascinating perspective," Deep Current said in the flowing tones of ancient Aquarian. "I had not considered the human worker's viewpoint on these matters." "Most beings don't," Marcus replied honestly. "We're usually just seen as the muscle that moves cargo around. Yet you clearly understand the broader economic implications," Veltar observed. "Where did you acquire such knowledge?" Marcus felt heat rise in his cheeks. "I read a lot, and I pay attention to things around me." "Self-education is an admirable trait," Thexandra chimed in her wind chime voice. "Many beings ignore learning opportunities." The conversation was interrupted by a commotion near the refreshment table. A young insectoid was chittering in distress while his parents tried to calm him. Marcus could see that one of the food dispensers was malfunctioning, spraying sticky purple liquid across the floor. "Excuse me," Marcus said to the group, immediately moving toward the problem. He knelt beside the dispenser and activated his building management unit, quickly accessing the maintenance protocols. The device's scanner revealed a clogged nutrient line, probably caused by crystallized protein buildup. Marcus pulled a small toolkit from his pocket and began carefully disassembling the dispenser's access panel. "Careful, human," Commander Vorth's voice rumbled behind him. "Insectoid nutrition is complex. Contamination could poison entire family." Marcus looked up at the hostile officer, then at the worried insectoid parents. "I understand the concern, Commander. I'm only clearing the nutrient line blockage. The safety protocols prevent any contamination of the supply." He worked quickly and efficiently, his hands steady despite the pressure of multiple alien gazes watching his every move. Within minutes, the dispenser was functioning normally again, providing the specialized nutrition that the young insectoid required. "Fixed," Marcus announced, standing and wiping his hands clean. The blockage was just crystallized protein buildup. Happens sometimes with high nutrition compounds. The young insectoid's parents approached him with what Marcus recognized as gratitude gestures in their species' body language. "Thank you, human Marcus," the mother said in careful standard. "Our child was very hungry." "Happy to help," Marcus replied, surprised by how good it felt to solve a practical problem for someone. As he rejoined the main group, Marcus noticed that the atmosphere in the room had shifted. Several tenants who had been giving him suspicious looks were now watching with what appeared to be interest rather than wariness. Even Commander Vorth seemed less overtly hostile. "Well handled," Zaralyn said quietly as she moved to stand beside him. "You showed both competence and consideration." "It was just a clogged nutrient line," Marcus protested. "You responded immediately to help another family's child," Deep Current observed. "This is not just anything." The rest of the evening passed more smoothly. Marcus found himself drawn into several different conversations, and while some tenants remained reserved, the overall mood was markedly more welcoming than when he had arrived. He shared stories about Earth and human culture, answered questions about his background, and learned fascinating details about the various species represented in the building. The breakthrough moment came when Veltar mentioned difficulties with his quarter's atmospheric controls. The Centauri preferred a slightly higher humidity level than standard, but the environmental system seemed unable to maintain the setting consistently. "I could take a look at it tomorrow," Marcus offered. "It might just need recalibration." "You would do this?" Veltar asked, clearly surprised. "It's my job," Marcus said simply, "making sure everyone is comfortable in their homes. Most maintenance workers require formal request and scheduling delay," Vexandra noted. "You offer immediate assistance," Marcus shrugged. "If I can fix something easily, why make people wait?" After the gathering ended, Marcus helped Zaralyn clean up the community room. They worked in comfortable silence, and Marcus found himself stealing glances at his landlady as she moved gracefully around the space. Her dedication to creating a harmonious environment for all her tenants was remarkable. "That went better than I expected," Marcus said as they finished stacking chairs. "You exceeded my expectations." "As well," Zaralyn replied. "Several tenants commented on your helpfulness and knowledge." "What about Commander Vorth? He still looks like he wants to challenge me to single combat." Zaralyn's scales shifted to an amused pattern. "He expressed grudging respect for your technical competence. For Vorth, that is significant progress." As they prepared to leave, Marcus hesitated. "Can I ask you something?" "Of course. Why did you really rent to me? And don't say it was just my qualifications. We both know there are other beings out there with better credentials and references." Zaralyn was quiet for a long moment, her scales cycling through several different hues. "I have spent my career studying interspecies relations and advocating for peaceful coexistence. But there is a difference between theoretical belief and practical action. When I met you, I saw an opportunity to put my principles into practice. So I'm an experiment in interspecies cooperation." "You are a person who needed a chance," Zaralyn corrected gently. "The fact that helping you also advances my broader goals is simply beneficial coincidence." Marcus felt a warmth in his chest that had nothing to do with the room's temperature. "Well, I hope your experiment continues to succeed." "As do I," Zaralyn replied, her scales brightening to a warm golden glow. Walking back to his apartment, Marcus reflected on how much his life had changed in just a few days. He had gone from facing homelessness to having a decent place to live, meaningful work, and the beginning of acceptance from his neighbors. More importantly, he had found someone who believed in his potential. For the first time since leaving Earth, Marcus Chen felt like he truly belonged somewhere. 3 weeks into his new role, Marcus had settled into a comfortable routine. His mornings began with a systematic check of the building's systems, followed by responding to any tenant requests that had accumulated overnight. The work was satisfying in a way that dock labor had never been. Instead of just moving cargo from point A to point B, he was actively improving people's lives. The breakthrough in tenant relations came unexpectedly on a Tuesday morning, when the building's primary water filtration system suffered a catastrophic failure. Marcus was in the maintenance bay reviewing supply orders when alarms began blaring throughout the structure. His building management unit immediately displayed a cascade of error messages. The main filtration plant had suffered multiple component failures, leaving the entire building without clean water. Emergency reserves would last maybe 6 hours with normal usage. Marcus contacted Zara Lynn immediately. She appeared on his communicator screen looking harried, her scales showing agitated patterns of deep red and orange. "How bad is it?" she asked without preamble. "Bad," Marcus admitted, studying the diagnostic readouts. "The filtration plant is completely down. I can't repair this level of damage myself. We need replacement components and specialized technicians. Station maintenance is already overwhelmed with similar failures in other sectors," Zara Lynn said grimly. "They estimate 48 hours before they can reach us." Marcus felt his stomach drop. 48 hours? The emergency reserves won't last that long. "I know," Zara Lynn said. "I will contact other Aquarian families to see if we can arrange temporary housing for tenants." "Wait," Marcus said, an idea forming. "What if we don't evacuate? What if we fix it ourselves?" Zara Lynn's scales shifted to surprised blue-green. "You said the damage was beyond your capabilities." "It is," Marcus agreed. "But I've been thinking about human problem-solving approaches. We tend to look for unconventional solutions when conventional ones aren't available." He pulled up the building's technical schematics on his unit. "The filtration plant is designed as an integrated system, right? But what if we bypass the damaged components and create a temporary parallel system using portable equipment? Is such a thing possible?" Marcus was already running calculations in his head. "The emergency reserves are stored in tanks on level 3. If I can rig a manual pumping system to circulate water through portable filtration units, we might be able to extend our clean water supply indefinitely. Where would you obtain portable filtration units?" "That's where it gets interesting," Marcus said with growing excitement. Commander Vorth mentioned that hegemony military equipment includes portable water purification systems for field operations. Dexandra works in mineral processing. Her species uses specialized filtration technology. Feltar's diplomatic quarters probably have backup life support systems. "You want to borrow equipment from the tenants?" "I want to ask for their help," Marcus corrected. Each species has different technological approaches to the same basic problems. If we combine their knowledge with human improvisation, we might be able to create a solution that none of us could manage alone. Zara Lynn was quiet for a moment, her scales cycling through thoughtful patterns. "This is highly irregular. Most beings would simply evacuate to other facilities. Most beings aren't humans living in a mixed-species building with neighbors who have complementary skills," Marcus pointed out. "Very well," Zara Lynn decided. "I will call an emergency building meeting. You can present your proposal to everyone." An hour later, all 12 tenant households had gathered in the community room. The mood was tense, with several beings clearly preparing to evacuate. Commander Vorth stood apart from the others, his 4 eyes scanning the room with military alertness. Marcus stood before the group, acutely aware that his proposal would sound either brilliant or insane depending on your perspective. "Thank you all for coming. I know this is an emergency situation and I want to propose an alternative to evacuation." He activated the room's main display and brought up his hastily prepared presentation. "Instead of leaving, I believe we can work together to create a temporary water filtration system, using resources we already have in the building." Murmurs rippled through the group. Several tenants exchanged skeptical glances. "Human proposes we risk our safety on untested improvisation," Commander Vorth growled. "I propose we combine our different technological capabilities to solve a common problem," Marcus replied calmly. "Commander, your military background includes field engineering, correct? Portable systems designed to function in hostile environments? Vorth's stance shifted slightly. Hegemony field units carry emergency purification equipment, but this equipment is designed for military personnel, not civilian populations. What about scaling up the output? Marcus asked. Connecting multiple units in parallel? Theoretically possible, Vorth admitted grudgingly, but power requirements would be substantial. Crystalline energy storage systems are highly efficient, Thexandra interjected, her wind chime voice carrying new interest. I have portable units for field research. Marcus felt excitement building. Veltar, your diplomatic quarters have independent life support backups, right? Could we tap into those systems? The Centauri diplomat nodded slowly. Emergency atmospheric processors include water recycling capabilities. Not large capacity, but could supplement other systems. Deep Current, the elderly Aquarian scholar, spoke up in his flowing tones. Aquarian biofiltration techniques use living organisms to purify water. I maintain small-scale systems for research purposes. For the next hour, the group engaged in increasingly technical discussions about combining their various technologies. Marcus found himself serving as a translator between different engineering philosophies, finding common ground between military efficiency, crystalline precision, diplomatic redundancy, and Aquarian biological integration. The insectoid family contributed knowledge of nutrient processing that could remove specific contaminants. A quiet Deltaran tenant offered chemical analysis equipment to monitor water quality. Even the species Marcus couldn't immediately identify had relevant expertise to contribute. This is remarkably complex undertaking, Veltar observed. Success would require unprecedented cooperation between multiple technological paradigms. Humans specialize in making impossible things work, Marcus said. But we can't do it alone. We need everyone's expertise. Commander Vorth stepped forward, his hostility replaced by what appeared to be professional interest. Human Marcus proposes tactical solution requiring multi-species coordination. This is unusual approach. Is it workable? Zarlin asked. Vorth considered the question with military thoroughness. Individually, each component system has limited capability. Combined and properly coordinated, he paused, his four eyes focusing on Marcus. Yes, this could work. The next 12 hours blurred together in a frenzy of cooperative engineering. Marcus found himself coordinating between species that had never worked together before, translating not just languages but entire approaches to problem solving. Vorth's military equipment provided the backbone of filtration capacity. Thexandra's crystalline batteries supplied stable power. Veltar's diplomatic systems handled pressure regulation. Deep Current's biofilters removed trace contaminants that mechanical systems missed. The insectoid family's chemical knowledge ensured compatibility between different processing stages. Marcus tied it all together with human improvisation, repurposing conduits, rigging temporary connections, and creating workarounds for incompatible interfaces. It was the kind of solution that no single species would have attempted, combining multiple technologies in ways their designers never intended. When water finally began flowing through their improvised system, the entire building erupted in spontaneous celebration. Clean, safe water poured from every tap, the result of true interspecies cooperation. Remarkable, Zarlin said as she stood beside Marcus, watching the readouts show stable system operation. You brought together 12 different approaches to create something entirely new. Marcus wiped sweat from his forehead, exhausted but exhilarated. I just asked everyone to share what they knew. The solutions were always there, we just needed to combine them. Commander Vorth approached, his military bearing unchanged, but something different in his expression. Human Marcus, he said formally, your tactical coordination was competent. Coming from Vorth, Marcus realized that was practically a medal of honor. Thank you, Commander. Your field equipment made the whole thing possible. Perhaps, Vorth replied, but concept of multi-species technical cooperation. This was human innovation. As the celebration continued around them, Marcus felt a profound sense of accomplishment. He had not just fixed a mechanical problem. He had helped prove that different species could work together to achieve things none of them could accomplish alone. It was, he realized, exactly the kind of bridge building that Zara Lynn spent her career advocating for. And somehow a broke human maintenance worker had helped make it happen. The success of the water filtration crisis had transformed the atmosphere in the building. What had once been polite tolerance had evolved into genuine community spirit. Tenants who had barely acknowledged each other before were now stopping to chat in hallways, sharing meals in the community room, and actively collaborating on various projects. Marcus found his role expanding far beyond basic maintenance. He had become an unofficial coordinator for interspecies cooperation, helping tenants navigate cultural differences and find common ground. It was work he had never imagined doing, but it felt more meaningful than anything he had experienced before. The change was most dramatic with Commander Vorth. The hegemony officer had begun seeking out Marcus for technical discussions, and their conversations had gradually evolved from purely professional exchanges to something approaching friendship. It was Vorth who brought Marcus the news that would change everything. "Human Marcus," Vorth said, entering the maintenance bay where Marcus was calibrating atmospheric controls. "I have received communication from Hegemony Command that may interest you." Marcus looked up from his work, noting the unusual excitement in Vorth's normally stoic demeanor. "What kind of communication?" "Report of water filtration crisis resolution has reached Military Engineering Command," Vorth explained. "Multi-species technical cooperation achieved results that impressed senior officers." "That's nice to hear," Marcus said, though he wasn't sure where this was leading. "You misunderstand significance," Vorth continued. "Hegemony Military is developing new protocols for mixed-species engineering teams. They wish to interview human who demonstrated coordination capabilities." Marcus felt his stomach lurch. "They want to interview me? For what?" "Consulting position. Development of multi-species cooperation protocols for engineering projects across hegemony space." The tool Marcus had been holding clattered to the floor. "You're serious?" "Hegemony Command does not make frivolous offers," Vorth replied gravely. "Compensation would be substantial. Travel to multiple systems. Opportunity to work on projects affecting millions of beings." Marcus stared at his friend, mind reeling. It was the kind of opportunity he had dreamed of when he first left Earth. A chance to make a real difference in the galaxy. To use his skills on a scale that mattered. The financial security alone would transform his life. "When would this start?" he asked quietly. "Immediately. Transport would arrive within days." That evening, Marcus sat in his apartment staring out at the station hub, watching ships arrive and depart in their endless dance. The offer from Hegemony Command represented everything he had thought he wanted. Respect, financial stability, the chance to apply his skills to important work. So why did the thought of leaving feel like tearing his heart out? A gentle chime at his door interrupted his brooding. Zara Lynn stood in the hallway, her scales showing concerned patterns of deep blue and silver. "Vorth told me about the hegemony offer," she said without preamble. "May I come in?" Marcus stepped aside and she entered his small apartment with her characteristic grace. She settled into the single chair while Marcus remained standing by the window. "It's an incredible opportunity," Marcus said, not meeting her eyes. "The kind of career breakthrough most humans only dream about." "Yes," Zara Lynn agreed. "It is exactly the sort of advancement your species values." Something in her tone made Marcus turn to look at her. "But, no buts," Zara Lynn replied. "The offer recognizes your unique talents and provides the recognition you deserve." Marcus studied her face, noting the subtle signs of distress in her scale patterns. "You think I should take it?" "I think you should do what brings you fulfillment," Zara Lynn said carefully. "What makes you feel that your life has purpose? And if I'm not sure what that is?" Zara Lynn was quiet for a long moment. "Perhaps I should not influence your decision. My perspective may be compromised." "Compromised how?" Her scales shifted to deeper blue tones. "I have grown quite fond of having you here, Marcus. Your presence has transformed this building into something I never imagined possible." Marcus felt his heart rate accelerate. Zara Lynn. The tenants no longer simply coexist, they actively support each other. Species that have been suspicious of each other for generations now work together routinely. "You created something beautiful here." "We created it," Marcus corrected. "Your vision, my coordination." "Perhaps," she conceded. "But you will create similar beautiful things with the hegemony. Important things that affect far more beings than our small community." Marcus moved to sit on the edge of his couch, facing her directly. "What if I don't want to affect millions of beings? What if I'm happy affecting 12 households in Sector 12? Zara Lynn's scales brightened slightly. "That would be a very human perspective. Your species often values personal connections over abstract achievements." "Is that wrong?" Not wrong, Zaralyn said softly. Simply different from how most species prioritize opportunities. They sat in comfortable silence for several minutes, the weight of the decision hanging between them. Marcus found himself studying Zaralyn's face, memorizing the elegant patterns of her scales, the graceful curve of her neck, the intelligence in her amethyst eyes. "Can I tell you something?" Marcus asked finally. "Of course. When I was on Earth, I always felt like I was meant for something bigger. That's why I came to the station. I was chasing dreams of making my mark on the galaxy. Dreams of greatness are natural for ambitious beings. But here's the thing," Marcus continued. "I've been happier these past few weeks than I've ever been in my life. Getting up every morning knowing that I'm helping people I care about, working with you to make something special. It doesn't feel small to me. It feels like exactly what I was meant to do." Zaralyn's scales shifted to warm gold patterns. "The hegemony position would take you away from all of this." "Yes, and away from you." The words hung in the air between them, heavy with implications that neither had been willing to acknowledge before. "Marcus," Zaralyn said carefully, "you should not make life decisions based on personal attachments that may be temporary." "What if they're not temporary?" Marcus asked. "What if what I feel for you is the most real thing in my life?" Zaralyn's scales cycled through several different hues before settling on a pattern Marcus had never seen before. Deep purple shot through with silver threads. Interspecies relationships are complex. Cultural differences, biological incompatibilities, social pressures. Are you saying it's impossible? I am saying it requires commitment to overcoming significant challenges. Marcus leaned forward, his heart pounding. Are you willing to face those challenges? Zaralyn met his gaze directly, her amethyst eyes reflecting depths of emotion that Marcus was only beginning to understand. For the right person, I believe I would be willing to face anything. Even a broke human maintenance worker? You are no longer broke, Zaralyn pointed out with amusement. And you are far more than a maintenance worker. What am I then? Her scales brightened to radiant gold. You are the being who taught an entire building full of aliens that cooperation creates more beautiful things than any of us can build alone. You are someone who sees potential where others see problems. You are... She paused, her scales shifting to softer hues. You are someone I very much do not want to lose. Marcus felt as if his chest might explode from the emotions surging through him. Then I guess I should turn down the hegemony offer. Are you certain? It is a remarkable opportunity. I'm certain, Marcus said without hesitation. Some opportunities are worth more than others. And some things are worth more than opportunities. Zaralyn rose from her chair and crossed to where Marcus sat. She reached out and gently touched his hand, her scaled fingers warm against his skin. I am very glad you feel that way, she said softly. So am I, Marcus replied, marveling at how right this felt. So am I. 6 months later, Marcus stood in the newly renovated community room, watching tenants from 3 different buildings mingle in animated conversation. What had started as a single building's water crisis solution had evolved into something much larger, a model for interspecies cooperation that was being studied and replicated across the station. Zaralyn appeared at his side, carrying 2 cups of what she had learned was his favorite earth beverage. Her scales showed the warm golden patterns that Marcus now knew indicated contentment and happiness. The delegation from Sector 5 seems impressed, she observed, nodding toward a group of officials who were deep in discussion with Commander Vorth about multi-species engineering protocols. Vorth's enjoying being the expert, Marcus replied, accepting the cup gratefully. Who would have thought that a hegemony military officer would become an advocate for peaceful cooperation? You would have thought it, Zaralyn said with amusement. You saw potential in him that he did not see in himself. The past months had been a whirlwind of positive changes. Word of their successful crisis management had spread throughout the station, leading to requests for consultation from other residential complexes. Marcus found himself traveling between sectors, helping other communities implement similar cooperative protocols. The work was challenging and rewarding, but more importantly, it allowed him to remain based in Sector 12. He had negotiated an arrangement where he maintained his building management duties while taking on consulting projects that could be completed without extended travel. Any word from the hegemony about their new protocols? Marcus asked. Commander Vorth received confirmation yesterday, Zarlin replied. The multi-species engineering teams have exceeded all performance expectations. 3 major infrastructure projects completed ahead of schedule with unprecedented efficiency. Marcus felt a surge of pride, followed immediately by a twinge of curiosity about what might have been. The hegemony position would have been prestigious and lucrative, but he had never regretted his decision to stay. Do you ever wonder what would have happened if I had taken that job? He asked. Zaralin's scales shifted to thoughtful blue-green patterns. I imagine you would have done excellent work and helped many beings. But the community we have built here would not exist. She gestured around the room, where representatives from a dozen different species were sharing food, comparing technical solutions and planning joint projects. This gathering includes beings from 6 different sectors, all working together on challenges that none of them could solve alone. It's bigger than I ever imagined it could become, Marcus admitted. That is because you think like a human, Zarlin said fondly. Your species has a remarkable talent for taking small successes and scaling them into galactic movements. The evening progressed with presentations from various interspecies cooperation projects. Marcus found himself called upon to speak about human approaches to problem-solving, a role he was still getting accustomed to. Standing before the mixed-species audience, he reflected on how much his life had changed. The key to human problem-solving, he explained to the attentive crowd, is our willingness to combine incompatible systems in ways that shouldn't work, but somehow do. We don't see technological differences as barriers. We see them as opportunities for creative solutions. Thexandra raised a crystalline appendage. But how do you overcome the natural tendency to prefer familiar approaches? By focusing on shared goals rather than familiar methods, Marcus replied. When everyone wants clean water, it doesn't matter if your filtration system uses crystals, biology, or military field equipment. What matters is making it work together. After the presentations, Marcus and Zarlin retreated to the building's observation deck. The station hub spread out below them, ships arriving and departing in streams of light against the star field beyond. I have something to show you, Zarlin said. Producing a small datapad from her elegant robes, Marcus examined the screen, reading through what appeared to be official documentation. This is a proposal for a new position with the station administration. Director of Interspecies Cooperation, Zarlin confirmed. The position would formalize the work you have been doing and provide resources for expanding the program station-wide. Marcus looked up from the pad, amazed. They're offering me a directorship? I don't even have formal qualifications for this kind of work. You have something more valuable than formal qualifications, Zarlin said. You have proven results in the respect of multiple species communities. What would this mean for us? Marcus asked, the question that mattered most to him. Zarlin's scales brightened to radiant gold. The position is based in Sector 12. You would maintain your quarters in the building while working from a new interspecies cooperation center we would establish in the community spaces. We? I have been asked to serve as your cultural liaison and deputy director, Zarlin explained. Her scales showing patterns Marcus had learned indicated excitement mixed with nervousness. If you accept the position and want a partner for the work. Marcus set down the datapad and took Zaralin's hands in his, marveling as always at the warm smoothness of her scaled skin. Are you asking me to be your professional partner or your personal partner? Both, Zarlin replied without hesitation. I have discovered that the two are not mutually exclusive when you find the right person. Marcus felt his heart soar. Over the past months, their relationship had deepened from professional collaboration to genuine partnership. They worked together seamlessly, complementing each other's strengths and covering for each other's weaknesses. More importantly, they had discovered that interspecies romance, while challenging, was far from impossible when both beings were committed to making it work. In that case, Marcus said, pulling her closer, I accept both positions. Zaralin's scales erupted in patterns of brilliant gold and silver, the Aquarian equivalent of a radiant smile. I was hoping you would say that, as they stood together on the observation deck, watching ships navigate the vast darkness between stars. Marcus reflected on the unlikely journey that had brought him to this moment. He had left Earth as a desperate young man seeking fortune and adventure in the galaxy. He had found something much more valuable, a place where he belonged, work that mattered, and someone who saw him not as a representative of his species but as himself. "You know," Marcus said softly, "when I was facing eviction from that horrible apartment in Sector 7, I thought my life was over. And instead it was just beginning," Zara Lynn replied, leaning against him with comfortable familiarity, thanks to a certain alien landlady who took a chance on a broke human. Thanks to a human who proved that different species can build beautiful things together when they choose cooperation over suspicion. Marcus tightened his arms around her, feeling the solid reality of their shared future. Below them, the station hummed with the activities of thousands of beings from hundreds of different worlds, all finding ways to coexist in the vast darkness of space. "So what's next for the Director of Interspecies Cooperation and his deputy?" Marcus asked. Zara Lynn's scales shifted to patterns of anticipation and joy. "We build something even more beautiful than what we have already created. We show the galaxy that cooperation between different species is not just possible. It is the key to thriving among the stars." "I like the sound of that," Marcus said, pressing a gentle kiss to the top of her head. "I like it very much." In the months and years that followed, the Interspecies Cooperation Program would expand beyond New Geneva Station to other facilities throughout the sector. Marcus and Zara Lynn would become recognized experts in multi-species community building, consulted by governments and organizations across known space. But for now, they stood together on their observation deck, watching the stars and planning a future that neither of their species had imagined possible until a desperate human and a compassionate Aquarian proved that the most unlikely partnerships could create the most extraordinary results. The galaxy was vast and full of challenges, but Marcus Chen was no longer facing them alone. He had found his home among the stars, and more importantly, he had found someone who would help him build whatever came next. The broke human and his alien landlady had become something much more beautiful than either had dared to dream.